Hello and welcome to The Dive, presented by Honda. I'm going to be a little bit quieter this time because Travis is sleeping and he specifically asked for it.
Wake him up.
This is season 4, episode 40, the finals episode. Yeah.
Yeehaw!
Mark's excited.
It's funny because I do a show with Travis and he's like, I have to be down. Kobe's sleeping. And that's at like 9 o'clock at night. And now it's like, 7:30 in the morning. You're like, I'm doing a show. I have to be quiet. Come on, get on the same page, guys. I want to be able to yell and have fun.
That's the thing with these schedules, man. Well, you can yell. Travis isn't going to hear you. You can yell as much as you want.
But that's true. Because Travis plays on speaker, so when I'm with Travis, I can't yell.
Yeah.
I guess Kobe
there you go.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Well, and I mean, honestly, if Travis wakes up Kobe by using speakers, then he's to blame, not you. So
yeah, that's true. Not wrong.
He's to blame for most things.
Yeah. Well, I think that's just a good rule of thumb.
We should start the show with some pertinent news because we're still during Worlds. We're all excited. The finals is coming up, and yet North America waits for no one. Okay, we got the drama started already. Boom, boom. Roster moves are coming out. We got all kinds of rumors flying around. Bjergsen retired and moved into being a coach. This is hype. I'm already super excited for the off season, and we're not even finished with Worlds.
Yeah, the Bjergsen retirement was interesting because so I had heard a rumor a couple of days before that he was probably going to be retiring, but I hadn't heard the coaching part. So I was like, I guess less shocked than some other people, but I was kind of happy that it meant he was still staying in the scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
That he was actually still going to be involved, that he still had the competitive drive and everything. I think that is really cool. Still, seeing that, it kind of hit me harder than I thought it was going to, just in realizing oh my God, there's so many LCS memories that Bjergsen is a part of and has been for so many years. He is so just tied to this league and the history of this league. When you think back to so many of your favorite moments and favorite finals, he's in them all, winning or losing, he is always there.
My favorite finals was the very first finals of the LCS.
Okay. So
which
he missed
is one of the only ones that he was not in.
Yeah.
He joined TSM in 2013. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It was nuts. And I mean, I definitely wasn't on the hype train. Kobe's like, this is crazy. And I'm like, yeah, it's crazy. I'm sad. I was bummed to see him go. I mean, like you're saying, with all these great memories. And I think
how is that? Okay, keep going.
Well, I was just saying, missing him is going to be one thing, but also looking forward, it's also still sad to me because, this was and arguably, I think, the best mid laner in the last split, regardless of what happened at Worlds and whatnot. And, I do think it's still close between him and Jensen and PoE and some of these other mid laners in the league. It's not like he's so far above them like he was when he showed up, but he's still really, really good. And this is just a blow to the league in terms of fan engagement.
I don't think anybody disagrees
with
with that.
I know. Yeah. I'm not saying it's this novel
I think
take,
it's crazy. It's crazy in the way that, kind of like we're referring to, Bjergsen has almost always been a part of the LCS. And always
sneaky, right?
Almost always, yeah, exactly. Been the center of TSM. They changed their name, so they don't like it when people call them Team Solo Mid anymore, because they rebranded. But that's what it started out as, and there have only been 2 solo mids for Team Solo Mid. It was Reggie, and then it was Bjergsen. And Bjergsen is what everybody associates with this team because only old fogies like us even remember Reggie.
And Bjergsen has been the mid laner a lot longer than Reggie was at this point.
Much longer, yeah, and of bigger importance too. So yeah, I think that's why everybody's reaction at first is this kind of what? Because he's still performing well. It's not like, oh, he dropped off and anyone
and he's never going to hit those highs again. And
exactly.
You think about retirement and you think, all right, they're washed. They can't get a job anymore. Now they're going to go into retirement because no one picked them up, right? Or maybe it's they can only get a really bad team or something. But yeah, I mean, he's near the peak, and I mean, everyone's obviously roasting TSM because they did poorly at Worlds, and I think that's sad, to have as the final note for Bjergsen. But I do think that, one of the things that I was really thinking about, after my initial wave of oh, that sucks. He's one of those guys I associate so heavily with all of these great LCS memories. One of the things I was kind of sad about was, damn, we never got to see him on another team. And maybe that sounds cold to TSM or a shot at TSM, but I don't mean it as that. It's more through the point of view of, I have been of the opinion over a number of the years internationally that Bjergsen was like as good or better than a lot of mid laners who were doing better than him at the events, right? And it's like, I always kind of wanted to see, like, would he succeed on a different team in a different environment with different pieces around him? Because we knew that he could play like at such a high level, but like other players from NA had more success than him when it came to the international stage. So like that was one of those things that I was always like, okay, I thought before Bjergsen retired, he was like going to join C9, or he was like going to go back to Europe, or he was going to do, there was going to be some other part to it, not just the entire tenure on TSM. And there is like a beauty to that, but I just kind of feel a bit sad that he never really got that international success. Like, you can point to the IEM tournament, but it's just not the same in the league world.
It's not. Shoot.
Like,
how about my WCG?
That counts. That's the same.
Is that the same? Yeah.
All right. You have that on the wall behind you, just out of frame. We all know it.
He's a literal world champion. He gave me the approval, so it's good. I'm taking that to the bank.
That's a dub.
I'm a basement dweller. I have no power.
Was I alone with thinking that? Like, were you guys thinking maybe he'd go somewhere else?
It was
too?
interesting because when you started out, you're thinking of like, one of the main things I was thinking of, and I was like, I didn't want to like disagree with the point. Like, I don't disagree with it, but it's not something that really crossed my mind. I realized I was like, I never had a desire to see him, on a different team. And I started thinking, okay, so they have changed players and pieces around him, but it has always been, TSM, and it has always been same owners, and only speculation goes into coaching staff and all that type of stuff. So I guess you could say like, a real deep rooted change to see, what other factors you could control might be interesting. But I gotta be honest, like my first thing I was thinking of a replacement. So I'm like, who the hell is signing up and is the shiny new.
The GOAT is your coach. He's gonna be better than you sitting down behind you, unless it's like Caps or like Rookie or like one of a handful of people. Bjergsen is gonna be better than you.
People are immediately, when we're tweeting out about this news and everyone's talking about it, and people are like, "Oh, who you think is gonna replace him?" And I'm like, "Well, honestly, I'm not super excited unless it's actually Caps or Rookie, or something like that, Mm-hmm. Unless it was, it would have to be almost a BS story of some diamond in the rough, oh my God, somehow nobody knew that this player was the same player that owned like 3 accounts on these different servers in, top 10 of Challenger, of all these different things. And it was like this,
Give me a origin story.
It's just like fairy tale story of like some unknown rookie. And I was like, okay, that would get me excited if TSM tried to do the same strategy that they did when they found Bjergsen. I really think that is just so hard to repeat nowadays when every single team, is getting blasted for not finding rookies. Everybody's like eyes peeled right now.
And to be fair, Bjergsen got a pentakill in Europe before he came over. Like he wasn't exactly he was a rising star already for a lot of people. So like,
still though, like remember at that time, like he's still on. It's not even an LEC team or at that time. Whatever
LCS,
we used to call it, LCS EU,
LCS 2.
Yeah, I'm just joking, by the way. No offense. It was. I still remember it being such a big thing because we were having a similar conversation to like we're having now. We're like, team solo mid. It's about the solo mid, and Reggie's been the only mid.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I would love if there's some training story where Bjergsen's just whipping this kid into shape in 1v1s all year round and just beating him into forging him into this steel.
Graphic with these descriptions.
I'm at a forge. Where are you?
Okay,
I don't know.
Okay.
Well, that was like the other thing for me is that I felt like it almost had to be someone who's at the absolute peak already, or someone who's brand new and really young, and Bjergsen is gonna mold them into the perfect mid laner, right? Like I can get behind either of those two stories.
His secret child.
Yeah. they're just like a 4-year-old or something. Like people are talking about Sword, right? I admittedly don't know a tremendous amount about Sword. But like he is 18. He is now eligible for LCS, right? He's been on the TSM Academy. Someone like that coming up, like I could get behind that. I do think that if you get someone who's more like, ooh, this is like a middle of the pack guy and he's pretty known and he's the replacement for TSM, no one's going to feel excited about it. Because Bjergsen has such an incredible story. Like, it needs to be someone that's already on his level or above, or someone that's brand new and has potential. And I feel like there's almost no in between. You can't pick up like Pobelter or Golden Glue or someone like that and be like, all right, here's our new mid laner, guys.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page about that. It's just crazy to go into this new era, and there's less certainty because when Reggie retired, they already had Bjergsen. That was a 1-2. Here we go. This is the passing of the torch. It was obvious. It was announced, I think, during Worlds as well. Then, if I remember correctly, and they had a video out, and like it was all this stuff, and they had this highlight montage of like here he was, with Copenhagen Wolves. We think he's going to be insane. Everyone kind of had already identified him as the next in line behind the Alex Eaches and the Expectes and the Froggins that were still dominating Europe. This was the young blood that we were able to sink our claws into. And there's not that same story here, which is why I think it is a weirder transition on top of all the other factors we already covered.
Yeah. So losing Bjergsen as a mid laner, Universal agreed, that's hurting us.
Coach Bjergsen.
I am actually really excited for Coach Bjergsen. Because paying attention to the offseason, yes, there's been all these roster rumors, and a lot of them are Team Liquid related. The other big thing that is happening is like the great purge of coaches. I have seen more coaches tweeting out, retweets and favorites, appreciated.
Team,
I'm still allowed to talk to other, like just across the board. It's like lit on fire here,
and big name ones too. Reaper, Kane, ThinkCard. I saw a ton of people.
And I do have a lot of confidence in Bjergsen from just all different sources. When you have player testimonials that have played with and against him, talking about his character, talking about how much they love playing with him in game, out of game, in reviews, his work ethic, all of these things. It's like there is not a demerit on Bjergsen's resume. I'm trying to dig up something.
I can think of some things.
I thought of one thing, but it's like it's drama related. So we're not getting into that.
The only thing game related I can think of is having heard from some players who disagreed on how they should be playing, right? And like frustrations about that. But then on the other side, I'm sure Bjergsen would have the same issue with them, right? So there's always going to be some butting of heads when you disagree about how to play the game. But to me,
he's grown over 7 years.
And the biggest thing to me is work ethic. And that's why I am a big believer that he will succeed. Because to me, I really think that most things in life just come down to how hard are you going to work? Because it is a skill to be learned like anything else. He obviously has the game knowledge. Doublelift was talking about how Bjergsen is always reading all these leadership books and coaching books and all this stuff, like that he's already interested in it just from the player side. So this is obviously something that, he still has, an interest and a passion for. And I think it would be really cool to see him reach higher highs as a coach than he did as a player. Like, I don't know how he would feel about that, but I think it would be cool to see, like, Bjergsen, the coach, getting out of Worlds groups. Like, to me, that's still the story, right?
It's
like,
going to be so
really
funny
cool
to watch the haters try and rationalize, like, Bjergsen was the problem, but he's still the coach.
Well, I mean, maybe he could be a better coach than a player, right? And that's saying a lot, but who knows? Like, there's no reason to say that he can't.
Yeah, I mean, it is true too as well that, like, to curb some hype around it is like, just because you're a great player doesn't mean you're always going to be a great coach. Like, there's plenty of examples of that in traditional sports. I will say in league, it does seem a little bit better. I think the transition to coach is a little bit easier, it seems. I think a lot of these guys, and Bjergsen in particular, has already done enough for TSM that it's borderline coaching already. It sounds like, about trying to get people on the same page and all this stuff. And like, players have a lot of power, and it does feel like they do a fair amount of coaching already. So I don't think it's as big of a leap.
That's an interesting crossover, because I've seen some people bring that up as one of the negatives of like, okay, we've been criticizing, some things about TSM in various stages of the history of the organization, and coaching is something that, comes up a decent amount of time. And then they're like, okay, well, if you're also attributing some of it, which is all pure speculation, everybody in almost all of these, coaching evaluations is doing most of it of speculation and just hearsay. It's like, so, those are always hard to put together.
Yeah.
But I am definitely more confident in him being announced as a coach than I can actually see myself being for, almost
Almost any
any
other
other
player.
announcement, right?
Yeah.
Player or any, honestly, figure in, in North America at the very least.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty exciting to follow. I think one thing that he may have as a challenge, especially depending on what the roster stays like, is the change of like role from peer to authority figure, right? And I know that sometimes that can be difficult, and I've had talks with players even about how that can be difficult, even just like becoming the shot caller. And at the end of the day, it's like you are the voice of authority, and it has to be a bit of a different dynamic, right? Some of the coaches that I've talked to that I think are really, really good coaches, have talked about how you can't necessarily be friends as much as you have, like there has to be more of a line, right? You can't always be like your best bud, because at the end of the day, when you say jump, they have to say how high, right? And I think that can be something that can be difficult, especially if you continue playing with someone like Doublelift, who like is a player that's like on your level and has won all the things and is more of a peer than someone that you would just be like dictating to.
Yeah, I think that's a huge concern. I mean, the one lucky thing is you could say like, hey, he's been a part owner for a little while now, so he probably already had a bit of a screwed up power dynamic in TSM. I mean, that's mostly me, because I agree. Like, it's interesting to point out Doublelift in particular, probably being the one person in the LCS currently who has the resume that can go toe to toe with Bjergsen. If you were just gonna pull out the receipts, who should we listen to? But I think it sounds like, based off how Doublelift was talking about it in some of his clips and stuff, I think he really respects Bjergsen and really likes working with him. And so I don't think it would be an issue, but it could be.
Speaking of Doublelift, he also mentioned that he was considering retiring alongside him. And then we also have a bunch of other rumors coming out at the same time. I quickly want to touch on the Team Liquid ones as well, because this is also the finals episode, and so we're going to have to eventually start talking about current League of Legends. But Jensen with the reported $4.2 million cash in over 3 years. Congratulations, my friend, if that is true. Alphari being speculated. All of this is just rumors still, as the fill-in for Team Liquid top. Does seem pretty hype. And then Santorin, I think the most muddy of the rumors is the Santorin one for jungle for them. But it's crazy how all of these rumors are surrounding Team Liquid. And coming into this year, I had already heard a lot of, and this is maybe 4 months ago or something, I had heard rumors of all the NA orgs were like, oh my God, payrolls are getting out of control. We're going to tone it down a little bit. And then you hear these headlines, you're just like, Steve is not toning down. Steve is jacking it up.
C9, on the other hand, though, like we talked about this before, but they're losing Licorice and getting Fudge, right? That's a tone down probably in salary. So maybe some teams are, but I do think that Team Liquid is like the most far away from like NA talent and raise up the young ones, and they are the like buy them when they're big and guarantee success. Right?
Jensen is a North American resident now, my friend. Yeah, so that is the highest paid going to the North American, technically.
But like that has been the TL strategy for a long time, right? Yeah. Is biggest salary, buy the stars and kind of smack them with your wallet. Yeah, exactly. Like go with the safe play, right? And if they are making money doing that, if their organization and business being successful doing that, then I think that's great. But it is crazy to think, all right, if some of these roster rumors are true, and the rumored salaries, Alphari is supposed to be over $1 million a year. I've heard rumors that Santorin would be up and around $1 million a year. Jensen would be 1.4 million a year. Tactical, he would be on the low end, but still probably a couple 100,000. And I've heard Core JJ is up around $1 million a year. So you're looking at a team that is like closing in on like a $5 million salary for 1 year for your starting roster, right? Yep. And maybe it's below that, like maybe it's 4.5 or whatever. But I mean, holy crap, right? And that's not even getting into your coaching staff and your support staff, and they have the biggest one. Facility costs and everything, and I'm like, oh my God, that is like you're getting close to like the low end salary caps in like traditional sports.
I assume they're gonna hire a bunch of new people, but when I was talking about the lighting on fire of coaching staff, a lot of the people catching fire are from Team Liquid, by the way. I mean, Jat's in there because he just got signed. He's got a multi-year contract. Maybe he's the one doing the lighting, but
yeah, he's
I
kicking
saw a
everyone
lot.
out. He's like, you guys were already on the boat when I got here. Get in the water.
He's cleaned it out. He's like, I'm not going to be associated with any of this. I was just like, whoa.
To kick in another rumor, there's the Dig sneaky rumor as well, which I know is a contentious one on the topic of NA talent because presumably Johnson is getting moved then. So I don't know. That's the other big one I think that I've heard that is picking up some interest for people to talk about. One, I'm super happy in general Sneaky back in the league because with Bjergsen gone, Doublelift, is said like, oh, I was even considering retiring when Bjergsen was, like I definitely want some of the old guard star power, big names and history in the league.
Something to comfort you, something that
something
Mark.
familiar.
Afro Sneaky as a bot lane sounds really fun to be
it
honest.
It actually does.
It's not going to be the same if Sneaky's back on a team and it's not like a top team. It's not going to feel the same, I don't think, right? If they finish like 7th place or 8th place or something like that, that's not going to be the triumphant return. And I know Sneaky's a really big competitor, and I had heard in the past some of the reasons that he wasn't coming back was, wasn't getting offers from top teams and wasn't, exactly what he wanted with like, he wanted to compete kind of thing. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens. I will say last thing on TL for me, at least, is that like this can come off as like, oh, negative on like, oh my God, they're overpaying, they're paying so much, but that's not really how I mean it. I do think that if that roster comes to be the like rumored roster with, Alphari and Santorin and everything like that is incredibly exciting, right? I think that is a team that has an insane amount of talent. I think a lot of people especially don't really know Alphari because he was on Origin, was 10th place team, right? In summer. And I saw a lot of comments on like, who the hell is Alphari? Like, why are we paying that much for this guy? I've never even heard of him, but he was first team All Pro in LEC, right? He was slamming on a bad team. And I think people would be, really excited to watch him when he comes here. So it would be cool to see if TL makes it happen, and if that big spending can bring the international success they've been chasing.
Yeah.
I think they seem like they have won the offseason so far if all these rumors come true. And outside C9, I don't know who could contest them. I mean, we'll see what happens with the Dig situation. We'll see what happens with TSM and stuff. But just based off early name value, it feels like TL the big winners and maybe the favorites.
Nobody should be able to contest them because they clearly are and already previously showed like they are willing to spend the top dollar to be the top team. So if a team does win the offseason over them, that is an upset on par with some of the the other big upsets
Just wait
that we
till
talk
Chobi
about.
comes to TSM.
It has to come from actual better scouting and better management. And one of the areas to do that now is obviously with the Osh News, trying to delve into that treasure chest of talent and trying to kind of hone and train up and see what kind of configurations you can make.
And we do have to remember though that it's not as though they're upgrading over total schlubs. I mean, people's opinion on Brox has lowered a lot, but at the start of last year, people were looking at the Broxa signing as like this big hype signing for TL, and are pretty excited. I think the community was pretty excited.
I think the community was more excited than.
That's fair. I mean, I think Santorin is definitely better and way higher stock right now. But Impact is also someone who has been very good for a long time, right? Alphari, I think people like on paper are expecting, okay, if he was like the best or second best or arguable whatever with Wonder, that he would be performing better and be more flexible play style wise, and that should be an advantage for TL. But Impact has been really good, and on Team Liquid and on some of these other teams, he has really been really good at, when they're doing international play, right? Like when we think about the TL final run and everything. So it's not as though they're just like eliminating some bottom tier players and upgrading them. So, I mean, I would say on paper, they were supposed to be the best team by far this year too. And they got 9th and then 3rd.
Yeah. I will say too, when teams are looking over at Osh talent, because that's new, don't forget the speeches that we've been giving all year long on building up North American talent and finding new North American rookies. Like I think the 100 Thieves project of the 100 Thieves Next TSM and Cloud9, I think them sort of along with Team Liquid as well have been doing a lot already in that area. And I know that a lot of teams are more focused now in that area. I would also say just on that little last tiny thing on all these roster moves and new talent, everything, building up everything like that. In the one about Dignitas with bringing in Sneaky and moving Johnson, I don't think the like NA talent discussion comes into that, because Sneaky is the definition of North American talent, and I think that discussion should not be like expiration dates of players. I think it should be drive and skill cap and these types of things from players. So
yeah.
Shall we get
agree
into
that older players can be really, really successful as long as they are actually driven. I mean, look at Double Lift, right?
Reckless. I think Reckless is a good example
Reckless
right now.
Is a great example. There's a lot of good examples, but yeah, I'm down to move on into semifinals, and we're obviously going to have a lot more off-season talk once some of the rosters get more solidified. There was just some big rumors we want to touch on. World semifinal reactions. Top is out. That was the big surprise for me. Them losing to Suning. Looking back at it now, seeing how it shook out, were you guys surprised? Do you think it kind of makes sense, given how the teams are performing already in the tournament?
I am still surprised because the things that I thought that were going to be true were still true to some degree for Top and for Suning. I mean, yeah, they did pick the Ornn, which I was like, they're so much less flexible, and he hasn't played Ornn in 38 games. Well, the Ornn game was their one loss, and he didn't look that great. He wasn't terrible on it. I was like, I'm fine with him, picking Ornn there. But I just thought Suning, the way that they team fight and slowing down some of these team fights, their target selection, the coordination between their carries when they are going to kill an enemy carry is so good that you can't really dispute in those moments, and that's where a lot of the big moments for them came from, because in a lot of the games it was clutch team fights and clutch smite steals from SOFM. These games, I felt like almost every single game we're getting soul point and just keep on getting denied soul points by either good setups or steals, or just the smite going the right way there. And I just think I'm still surprised, but I am so amped for Suning. We'll get into it later. I definitely think they are still underdogs, but for underdogs to come up on top multiple times in a row has got to get you on their side,
Yeah, I think to go answer Azale's question for me, it was in retrospect a little bit in line with how the tournament had been going. I think it's hard to shake the domination of Top Esports domestically from your mind in some of these things. But I mean, Suning had been doing super well at the tournament, like we already said, knocking off JDG. You could tell all their players had leveled up significantly since the playoffs that had happened domestically. Like, they were playing better at Worlds. Everyone looked good. There wasn't like a single weak link you could identify. They're a really solid team with some pretty unique strengths, like Bin and SOFM and stuff, and even Sword Art. Like Huangfeng. Like, they are a really, really good team. And so I don't think it's surprising that now that you've seen this run of like getting first in Group A, which had some pretty good teams, and then beating JDG, like that's actually not that crazy. That they could take down Top, who I think you could also say didn't have, despite being a semifinalist, and which is a huge accomplishment, it wasn't quite the level we were all expecting out of this team. Like Knight was hyped as the best player in Worlds, best mid laner, and he was really good. No shade, but he didn't dominate Angel in any real game other than maybe the Echo game, which was his one maybe pop-off game, and they still lost that one. So like I think it's a little in line with how things were trending in the tournament. Suning were trending up. They were doing well. They were pulling all these things off. Top was good, but not quite the level we expected coming into the tournament, and upset happens.
Yeah, I will say the one thing that really was a big surprise to me, because I watched a lot of Top throughout the LPL, so like that stuff is still very in my mind, right? And Bin, you're saying there was no like weak spot, but Bin got trashed by Zoom in the quarterfinals. I feel like that got largely overlooked because they won the games. but Bin was up like 40 CS at 12 minutes in Renekton versus GP, which a lot of people consider a winning matchup for GP, right? Zoom was consistently trashing Bin. The only game that Bin was doing well in lane, because I went back and I actually watched all these lanes considering doing from Lane Kingdom. The only lane that Bin was really doing well that I can remember was the one where he started with the Sheen at level 1. Every the game he was getting clapped. So when I saw that, and then I pair that with how top played against Suning in the playoffs, where they focused top, they played around counter picks, they camped for 369, and they crushed Bin, right? That was the strategy I was expecting. And and I'm coming into this saying, all right, 369 and Zoom are considered the top 2 in the league. Zoom trashed him last game. Top is a team that is able to play through top lane, play counterpicks, play carries. They already did it against this team. They swept them doing it. That's what I was expecting. And the biggest surprise to me was they didn't even try. They weren't playing around top lane at all. I was actually so disappointed that we didn't see it whatsoever. And, there's a lot of criticisms or maybe not criticisms, but like the mentioning of Bin doesn't play tanks because he hadn't really played Ornn at all. 369 is 1-6 on Ornn all year. Like,
yeah,
it's his worst win rate by far. He doesn't really play tanks either, except I guess Scion, but he's playing a little bit of that.
I mean, but that's where I was going to go, because you're saying like, well, if you look at quarterfinals, Bin was getting trashed by Zoom. I mean, Zoom was getting a lot of strong picks like Renekton and stuff. But if you look at the
GP is supposed to beat Renekton in isolation usually.
Yeah, but at least Renekton,
or at least not be down 40 CS.
No, but Renekton can with jungle coordination and stuff. Win that lane. But look at Top's quarterfinals. If you want to play that game, they did nothing top. They just they ended up taking Scion and stuff because they couldn't play top side while bot lane was inting. And guess what? Jackie Love had another pretty poor performance relative to his own high standard again. And so I actually think what happened with top in quarters happened again here for the most part, where they tried the one game.
They had the blueprint,
Yeah. So I would say, to your point, just do the same thing though. There were adjustments made on the side of Suning from the same.
I'm not saying they did the exact same thing. I'm just saying that the struggles that top had still existed in semis, and Bin, after the one Jace game, they just abandoned carry top for top.
And I really wanted to talk about it from Suning's side and the adjustments that specifically SOFM made, because a lot of them, when they trashed them in semifinals in LPL, it was the counter pick, plus it was Karsa is up there each time getting the first blood for them, and SOFM is getting farm leads. And I think that they really learned their lesson from that one. In multiple of those games, SOFM had 40 CS leads over Karsa, and yet top and bottom were smashing so hard, bottom by themselves and then counterpicks on top side, that it didn't end up mattering, even when SOFM could go up and get a solo kill on 369. So that's where I thought a good adjustment was made from this team, and how I feel like SOFM has been so flexible when we're all just talking about Kindred and Graves and Nidalee and stuff. He's still in some of these games, like the ones where they have double carry solo laners. He plays a Jarvan, and he always has this tendency where we always talk about his tank builds, even on like Lee Sin and stuff. And then putting that together with the team fights that they constructed, and how he's using this to be the focal point for setting up those carries. I just thought, man, I was really enamored with the improvements that they made. Yes, I was also disappointed in top.
And Jackie Love and Yanja, that to me was actually like how they did in the regular season and in playoffs. I mean, they 2-0'd them when they played them in the regular season, then they 3-0'd them in playoffs. Like, top slammed Suning this year in summer at LPL, right? And a large reason was Jackie Love and Yanja just were winning every lane. And Huangfeng, I think, has really leveled up. And it wasn't just about the lane, because I do think that Jackie Love had some good games and had some good lanes, but even when he was playing for an advantage, he failed to execute in team fights, right? Like, to me, game one was so egregious, where they had, so much emphasis on getting this Wukong ahead. And SOFM is spending all his time up there, and Wukong's a little bit ahead, and it's like, great, you got Wukong ahead, but mid is losing hard to Rookie, and bot is losing hard to Jackie Love, right? Or excuse me, I said Rookie tonight.
Yeah.
So it was like mid and bot advantage versus top, and I'm like, all right, all you have to do is just not int into the Wukong in a team fight, and it's the game is yours. And then both dragon fights, the only critical fights of the entire game that happen, they have full vision of the Wukong, and they just like run into him and die. The second one was actually so horrible. The second one, 369 is literally fighting Wukong over the wall, and Bin uses his first charge of Wukong ult, and then Jackie Love flashes in range of the Wukong to try to kill a support. And Bin's like, all right. He just flashes off the wall and uses second charge of the Wukong ult and kills him. And it's like, things like that were so disappointing to watch. I'm like, this to me was such a good team fighting team. And they just seemed to completely lose sight of their win conditions and of how to team fight around this Wukong. And it's like, it's not even though he got some TP flank. He was standing there. Your Jace marked him both times, and then you walked into him and died. And it's like, whoa, how did we lose the game?
You could definitely tell it. And Jackie has had this tendency come out, at different times as well. Those mistakes from him and the frustrations. I did feel, and especially when we got the listen in afterwards where he's telling Yanja to, devour Knight in the middle of a team fight and stuff. And you have that like kind of micromanagement come out and he knows in a lot of these games that, he's the weakest link, Yanja. I just feel so bad for him, because when everyone's looking at you and you're messing up too, it's like when you're getting flamed and you can't say anything back because it's true. And like, man, I felt so bad for him afterwards. You could see like he was really holding back a lot of the emotions and stuff.
There's a lot of rumors that he's getting replaced.
Yeah,
by PP God and things like that. So it's like he probably knows that's his last game.
That's the thing. Like he knows, and it's not one of those things where you're like, no, you're wrong. Fuck you. You're like, you're right. All right.
No, you got to go the Solky mindset where you start flaming your team. Like, you didn't give me any help this game. You should have been bot lane for this play.
When Karsa was consoling him, I was just like, oh my god, this is getting too emotional for me. I got to tune out.
So positive spin then.
All right, let's look at the sinning side because I
was gonna say the Flash Wolf storyline. I mean, one of the two being able to pop off. Sword Art making a finals. I think it was cool to get that.
The tears are just gonna keep coming. Now he's got his extra quest of like, I gotta do it for Karsa.
Yeah, like the positive tears now are like that was just such a cool storyline where he's like, well, if I'm gonna lose, like, you better win now, Sword Art. Like, I thought all that was really cool. And it's adding, what's weird is it's like retrospectively adding even more history onto that Flash Wolves lineup. And, look at how insanely good these 5 players were from this, region that didn't have a ton of talent behind them, and how insanely good they were able to be to kind of carry the LMS for a couple of years.
Well, especially Karsa and Sword Art, who were like,
right now that they've come over
to Maple too.
Yeah, I was gonna say even so. Maple right now on LPL, people are like, we don't talk about him as the one that came over. But during the Flash Wolves era, we focused on Maple so much, and he truly was performing during that era as well. And I like that the coaches are getting mentioned a lot too. The multiple coaches from Flash Wolves that have found success. Fluid Win is still in here as well and making the finals.
Yeah, so I think it's just a really cool story. That extra layer of these Flash Wolves players still popping off and shaping the history of Worlds.
Did you see Sword Art's interview after where he was talking about Bjergsen retiring? Mm-mm. And I thought that was actually really interesting because it was like, at first I hear TSM Bjergsen, because he says like he's speaking another language and then he says Bjergsen's name and it's very recognizable. I was like, what is he talking about?
What's coming?
For after he just won semifinals? And it was really interesting. It was like through the lens of like, here's another player who's been around forever, and and his career is ending, and I've been around forever too, and like I need to make the most of it. Because like essentially like you don't know when it's going to end. You don't know when your last shot is. And like, to me, like that like really resonated. That was really cool. And just the idea of
some life advice there.
These are these guys who have been around forever and who have played alongside each other and who have, fought against each other at events over like an entire decade practically. Right. And this is the best shot that Sword Art has ever gotten to really like reach those true high highs, to reach that international glory. So he had never made semifinals before. Now he's in the finals, right? And I think it's hard not to root for him. especially alongside Huangfeng. If you guys haven't watched the Huangfeng story, you should. But I mean, the things that this guy went through, getting abandoned by his parents, essentially like having to come up by himself, and even the struggles in like his rise through the pro scene, and some of the things he dealt with there, like qualifying to the LDL with a team, and then having the owner, after all these trials and tribulations, then sell their spot without even consulting them. And then so he's not in after he thought he had finally got in. And like it's just a crazy story, and it really does make you cheer for them. And I think that Suning, as much as I was disappointed with Top, I'm so pleased with Suning because they have developed and become a much more complete team. Suning in the LPL, if you watch them, was really just SOFM and Bin, and were they going to be able to carry the game? And if yes, you won. If no, you lost, right? And that's like how it felt for the most part. Angel and Huangfeng were more like these kind of journeymen, these role players who would be good in team fights, but the game wasn't about them because SFM was either spending all his time farming or spending all his time helping Bin for the most part. And so I do think it's really cool to see this like evolution of the team and see that the bot lane is actually really improving and stepping up and becoming the focal point in some of these games and in some of these series. And though Angel I still don't think is the focal point, Angel is getting some respect too, because I mean, you even look at that game 4 against Top, where he was just slamming on the Akali, right? And a lot of people had really kind of looked at him as like, oh, he's this control mage guy, but really he can play assassins, and he spends a lot of his time in solo queue playing assassins. So it's like he's more dynamic than the credit that is given to him. And I think it's really cool to see the total evolution of Suning. And it does really make me want to cheer for them, going into the finals, because again, they feel like they're the underdogs, and you're like, ooh, could they really make it happen? But coming into Worlds, you wouldn't have thought they'd beat JDG. You wouldn't have thought they'd beat Top. The jury was out on if they should be favored over G2 or not. But like their run has been incredible. Like Freak pointed out that they would have basically the most impressive run in Worlds history if they win. And I really like that point, because people's kind of power ranking loosely was the top 3 was JDG, Top, and DAMWON. They already beat JDG and Top in best of 5s. And then the number 4 that a lot of people had, or number 3 arguably, was G2. And they beat them in groups, right? It's like they're 2-1 over G2. They won a best of 5 over Top. They won a best of 5 over JDG. If they win a best of 5 over DAMWON, you beat the 4 best teams, 3 of them in best of 5s, to become the world champion. That is inarguable. That is like, there's no bracket luck. There's no nothing. That is the best run that has ever happened, I think, at Worlds.
Yeah, just quickly also, on the Angel point, I want to interject some stats, because he is doing so much work with so little. He got the 11th most, which is not very much. CS between 15 and 30, which is often how you measure.
Jackie.
Yeah, exactly. Or not. Yeah. It's really says a lot how he continually is kind of this workhorse, and you see him picking Galio for the team. Picking whatever mid laner fits this composition, and then for him to pop off in the Akali game, that's why I was just getting so excited for him, because he finally got to be, one of the, the stars of this team. And in that scenario, even though it does come up pretty rare for this team, he really shined. Plus, he got to do it on, his signature pick also, which they always, always is Zoe is always mentioned as, one of the main ones and super feared, but that's what made me happy for him. But I also, I'll let Mark go. I wanted to tack on to, when you're talking so much about Suning and Suning stories, I think DAMWON has really good story as well, with their meteoric rise in competitive League of Legends, and does need to be represented more, because everybody's just, it feels like it's just a landslide now of everybody's just like,
cooler, bro.
These stories are just so good. We got to get on there. So I think they do at least need representation, and I want to,
we'll talk about them in there. We'll talk about them.
Go ahead, Mark.
I don't even remember anymore. Yeah. Angel's good. They'll need him in first DAMWON. He can't just be this control mage mid laner sitting there while the rest of the team carries. I don't think you can do that and hope to win. And the fact that he can pick his opportunities, when game 4 arises and it's time for the Akali, and you see, I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure why he thought this was the best Akali time. I mean, TK and Ori on the other side makes it sound like it could be a little difficult in team fights, but he pulled it off. So, I mean, I think the fact that he can when given the carry tools actually carry is going to be huge for them if they're going to actually upset. And I assume we'd call it an upset, DAMWON.
Yeah, I mean that actual team comp and that is one of the ones that I'm doing like an extra segment on because it is so cool how they utilize double split pushers of Jack Sakali to then have Leona Jarvan bring a team fight together, and actually how difficult it is because you can't fight front to back, as you're mentioning, when you have two melee carries. And so they have these creative ways with SOFM and Sword Art getting these engages, and the two solo laners getting on the priority targets is that gave me so much confidence. But to speak on DAMWON for a little bit, people still need to remember. And DAMWON G2 is a great segue because last year was where most people kind of became affiliated with DAMWON and became some people became enamored with the Nuggery story, and he's this Wild West, he's gonna go fully greed style with Klepto and Cole. He's gonna disrespect you, and then he's gonna slap you in your face and still win the game and all this stuff. And then with them, and that was built up with all of this scrim god stuff, where before they were even in the LCK, they were defeating world's teams in scrims because there were not other teams around for the world's teams as the tournament goes on. And so there's just so much hype around them, and for them to lose last year in quarters versus G2, a lot of people started to kind of write them off and their, I guess, reputation took a hit there. But that was literally this is still part of the rise of them. This is only 2 years in the making for DAMWON, for them to go from not even an LCK team to quarters to finals of Worlds.
Two finals as heavy favorites.
It's a crazy ascent, and their average age is pretty much the same as the average age of the Suning players. How young these guys are. So you're wagging your finger, Mark. Is that bad intel?
No. I'm saying like this hopefully can put to rest some of the we lacked leadership or veteranship. I mean leadership maybe, but we didn't have enough experience in these kinds of things. It's like Suning top had 7 players who had never been to Worlds before. Playing there, and a lot of them were super young. DAMWON had been to Worlds once before, but I don't think that they leveled up just because they went to Worlds once. I think they leveled up because they kept
their Spring. It was not instant level up because Spring and LCK wasn't the dream that Summer was for them. So
yeah, exactly. Like people got better for sure. I'm not denying that growth can happen, but it's not like you need some level of experience. Like, oh yeah, Ben's 18 now. That's why he's in the World Finals. He's got it all figured out.
Yeah.
And these two, I mean, I think this should never have really been a big talking point as much as it has been in the past about rookies and all this kind of stuff. But come on, you can do it if you're good. That's really what matters.
JDG was the same, right? Like in the JDG Suning series, it was like the only guy with any international experience, I think, was Sword Art, right?
Yeah.
It was 9 of the 10 players basically haven't actually been here, or at least been there very, very little. Maybe there's someone I'm forgetting about, but I mean, it's completely true, right? And I think it is this kind of new wave of players, right? This absolute, elite level teams, from the LPL, from the LCK, are all brand new players that are just kind of rising to these incredibly high highs so fast. And DAMWON has just impressed me the most of any team throughout this entire event, and it doesn't feel close. I don't feel like they've been challenged at all throughout the entire event. They have 2 losses now in the whole thing. 1 loss to G2 in what was not even a remotely close semifinal. No losses in the quarterfinal. 1 loss to JDG after they had already locked first in groups. That's it. There's just they are so strong. And I think that they're such a complete team, that it's really, really hard to attack them because they do have, a wide variety of strategies. They have incredible players at pretty much every role. I do think that there was some criticism kind of thrown towards their bot lane and stuff at first, but people are realizing that okay, well, their bot lane actually is pretty damn good too. Can't really attack them that much. Ghost has actually been playing very, very well throughout Worlds. We saw Showmaker, his TF is unreal, and it's getting through pick ban because there's so many other things that you have to worry about. That last game on TF, solo kills caps mid, teleports top off the base, kills top lane, then first ult is towards bot lane, kills them too. Like Nuguri can counterpick you and slam you, can play a tank, can play Lulu,
can play Fiora and int it.
Yeah. Well, that I'm blaming more on his team, to be honest. He was like almost 1v2ing every time.
I'm kidding.
But true, he can do that. He can do it all. Get you a man who can do both. But I mean, he can be like the primary carry. He can enable Canyon, who's had an incredible tournament. You know, we've had multiple games now where he's found a good matchup for Lulu top alongside of Graves, who he can then just like give farm to and just like, you know, funnel into this guy and then make him ridiculously hard to take down later on. So they are just so strong because they have such a diverse range of strategies. I think their preparation is better than any team that I've seen as far as, you know, their pick bans and stuff and their like actual in-game level ones and their preparation have been really, really good. I guess to be fair, you know, we did see, you know, G2 have some incredible level ones, especially in their quarterfinals. So I got to give credit there. But I just think that DAMWON is like such a powerhouse, such a heavy favorite. It's hard to not have them as the far and above favorite, you know, coming into the finals.
Yeah, and I want to touch on, you know, we can try and jerk some tears from the DAMWON side for the stories too. You know, I saw people are talking about Ghost specifically, you know, playing multiple years. This is not a guy that is new or dominated for a long time, right? He was one of the ones that played for multiple years. CJ Entis, BBQ Olivers, so much loss and having to deal with, you know, fan flame and everything that goes with being on a losing team. To have a big redemption arc and make it all the way to finals with, you know, the favorite team, the most dominant LCK team, is also uplifting because kind of when we were touching on earlier with, you know, feeling bad for the players that perform bad and know that they're performing bad. I think it's equally as uplifting when you do get redemption stories like that, because this is not something that's been handed out, right? You mentioned it. He's actually been performing well. And I feel very firmly that this Worlds once again has proven really heavily that you cannot hide weaknesses in any lane. If you do have a weakness, like, you know, okay, we already used them before, but support, you know, Yanja, you know, this, yeah, it's one of the most favorite teams, but Fnatic, they smell blood. They attack that stuff every game over and over with multiple people all game long. You know, maybe an example closer to home, like, you know, top lane. Solo had a rough go of it. We've had mid lane carries, we've had jungle hard carries. It's really has shown that you do need everyone, and you have to be robust.
Yeah, I think the Ghost story is really cool. I mean, he's still young too. You know, he's 21, but he started in 2015. So like, yeah, he's young, but this is a guy who's been through the ringer a little bit, because people get chewed up in the LCK sometimes when you have these tough performances.
Hard on your mental.
Yeah, so I think that bounce back's cool, and I think what's also really cool about it was in the regular season, I think it was like he had pretty terrible CSD. It was like -10 or something. And I think a lot of people jumped on that as like, look, he's not that good. But he was playing a team game, you know, like when you have Showmaker, Canyon, and Nuguri on the top side, and Beryl who wants to roam.
Beryl's
you know,
just
like,
roaming, yeah.
Yeah, like you're like, okay, you know, I'm not going to get in the way and say, feed me. I want to look good too, guys. And then the finals, they had the Caitlyn draft when they slammed DRX.
Stay humble.
Yeah, he's like, it's my time when he got the Caitlyn Lux, you know, you're on Ornn now, and he got his moment, and he slammed that game. And I think it speaks to kind of how we talked about Angel showing like, hey, when put in the right moment, he can do that too. Ghost is that, where most games, you know, you're probably not going to be the focal point, but when it's time, he can step up and crush you. And I think that's why DAMWON is so good, because you get these teams that are triple threats, not like all three are activated at once. Like IG might have been more of that style in the past, you know, where everyone's trying to carry every single game. These are, you know, playing team games, but picking the moments when it's right for them.
You reminded me of a story from way back when for me, from middle school on my basketball team. One of the things my coach said to me that stuck with me for so long, because it was early on in one of my first truly competitive teams. He tried to sub me in for a foul shot to win the game, and
oh no,
I was like, I was really, really nervous. I was like, "Are you sure?" And just me asking, "Are you sure?" to him, he was like, "Sit back down. I only want someone who wants the ball." someone who has confidence at this moment. And so moments like that where, it's a player like Angel, who has one of the lowest amounts of farm between 15 and 30 given to him by lane assignments from the team. When you get the Akali pick to go legendary is so big. You want players that when you give them the ball, they want the ball, they have the confidence, they will dunk it like that, even if you have to play other roles.
And if that player doesn't need the ball and is not demanding it all the time, like, as a coach, you are in love with that player. You're so happy to work with people like that. So yeah, I think getting back into DAMWON versus G2, Ghost got to show some of that in this series as well, that he is actually a monster in his own right.
And I think, it's a little bit interesting to talk about the one game that G2 won, because that's maybe what people are going to kind of look at. And I mean, that the way that G2 won their game was through this 1-3-1, was by playing, side lane more effectively. It was by attacking the Fiora nonstop, right? They were able to
he got attacked
with the TF, TPing in. And Caps was just way more effective in the side lane in that game than Showmaker, who took the Silas, which is supposed to be a good answer, but Caps was playing around, denying the ult being stolen at critical times, always kind of the first one to make the play. And that's something that it's hard to say that's a recipe to beat DAMWON, because G2 is one of the best macro teams in the world and one of the best teams in the world at just playing that style. And I'm not sure that you can just say, all right, Suning, just go BG2 in the side lane. It's just not something that I think they can do. Yes, there was the 1-3-1 game with the Akali and stuff, but I just don't think it's the same. And I do think that you have to be able to play the map against DAMWON and be able to deny some of these critical picks from Showmaker, because I think if Showmaker is getting to play side lanes and getting to be the one who's actually dictating the pace of the game on the TF, it's going to be near impossible, because he's such a strong laner and also is able to influence everywhere on the map.
Yeah, I think we should get right into it then, because it's so fun. Getting into the actual final matchup. I always start from the underdog side to try look for ways in, and then Azale comes in and he's like, no, they're worse.
And we're gonna slap the fattest
yeah. But I really think a couple of specific picks have shown to be really effective, and I think the core is what holds those picks together. The Leona and the Twisted Fate, having this hard CC engage options from your support role, and depending on the rest of the team comp, I'm just using these as examples. The Twisted Fate, it's the aspects of the kits that these two bring, where you continually try and force these errors on the side of DAMWON in their setups for these plays. And this holds true in both of the losses. It was the JDG game early on, and the 1G2 one that they lost. It's not necessarily these specific champions, but those tenets kind of hold true. And I feel like Suning pick a lot of crowd control from their bottom lanes. It's either CC carry plus CC support, or at the very least CC support and hard engage. And I'm just looking at the last piece for them to actually pull it together, which has been kind of more aggressive takes towards the mid game, because a lot of the times Suning, they haven't been so aggressive in some of their attempts to cut plays off or to find picks first, and they look a lot at team fights, and they've been really good at executing those team fights. But I think with DAMWON, they're so good at them that once they get their setup, it's going to be really tough. So I was looking more towards some of those things with the long range and mobility to be able to try and punish that, like the Leona, like the TF.
The other thing I'd throw in for something that happens in losses is like Nuggery. He's a lot better than last year, but the whole kind of run it down, he can boom in a game. Not like he mental booms for the series or anything, but those Fiora games can happen. And Bin's also highly volatile. He had a pretty rough game in one of them as well. And so I do think if you can make the series a little bit about top lane, which it feels like they want to do in general, based off their whole LPL store history, you can maybe make the series a little bit about top lane. They can do some interesting things. Bin still hasn't actually played Shen. When he had that, they early picked that, and it's kind of like a flex. But I wonder if they can actually put that in the top lane.
I mean, SOFM in the interview afterwards, he was like, "I have never scrimmed with Shen. I didn't have any champs picked." Or Sword Art said it, but he was like, "Yeah, yeah, he hasn't played that in a single scrim, you know."
Play some games with it. It's good. You can.
I thought it might be a little slip up that they were like, "Yeah, he doesn't have any champs left." I was like, "Whoa, still got finals to play," but it is kind of obvious that the jungle pool that's been whittled down. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, I just like if they can find advantages in draft, doing clever things to try and because Nuguri also has a great pool, bouncing between Lulu, Fiora, tanks, whatever.
And Shen does hold to one of those tenets with the hard CC and the mobility to be able to make those types of plays with
it's
Twist of Fate, Bard, Leona.
It's kind of SOFM style too, where like as great of a farmer as he is, as smart he is about ganking and making plays and these kinds of things, he usually ends up building for the team and playing for the team in a lot of ways. And Shen is a team-centric pick. So I hope to see like these kinds of things working in Sunning's favor a little bit, some interesting drafts, some top lane focus, top 2v2s, these kinds of things that they can maybe pick on Nuguri a little bit.
My worry is that when I think of the two big picks, or at least the ones that I kind of perceive as the big picks for Ben, has been Jackson GP. And I do think that it makes red side so incredibly important when we already know that Nuguri has Lulu as an answer. He's so happy to play into GP. And I also think that one of his best picks, if not his best pick, is his Kennen. And that is really difficult for Jax. So, these are kind of like some of the concerns that I do have, is I do think Nuguri has been much more flexible. He's playing a larger variety of styles. When we look at the JDG series, it was basically just like GP every single game, right? And he already has 4 Jax games played. Ben does as well. So like, I do think that Jax as a pick can really work. But like from my point of view, when DAMWON's on blue side, they're probably just going to play like Ornn, right? They're just going to blind Ornn or maybe Renekton. And Renekton, even though Ben actually did beat 369 in the Jax versus Renekton matchup, that's not normally how it goes. So, I mean, I think that, they're like on blue side, you either ban GP and you pick Renekton, or you just blind Ornn and you just like don't really care.
I would say for sure Sunning are going to return to banning Ornn every game. Because they previous to that, they had banned Ornn every single game.
And you just go Renekton, because it's like Renekton is actually good in everything he has except GP. So you ban GP and you play Renekton. I just think that, like, to me, like the top lane matchups are very easily dictated by DAMWON, based on what we've seen. There's nothing that Ben has played that is actually good in a Renekton with tanks banned.
You know what?
Like,
do the SOFM style, you haven't played it yet in Scrim, doesn't matter. Slap him with a Quinn. Nice Renekton. get him back him back for semifinals in LPL. You better have your jungler though.
I will say, I mean, flexibility is great, and if you can play multiple styles, that's better than just being able to play one style. But you can have one style. Like, you can just be like, we're carry top.
Not if it loses to the picks that the other guy has.
I mean, hopefully he can think of a Renekton counter in some capacity. Like, it's not like Renekton's this new thing. They've been playing into Renekton all year. So I think
it's Ben's most big champion.
Yeah, so like I think he should feel comfortable with the fact that the other guy wants a blue side first pick or whatever, early rotation of Renekton. That's not new in any capacity, as well as the fact that red side's actually favored in this world.
That's what I'm saying, is I think that like on red side, DAMWON will be able to like counter pick pretty heavily for top, with like Lulu and Kennen and these types of picks. Whereas like I don't think that there's the same flexibility, at least that has been shown for Sunning. That's my concern. And I agree, it is fine. Like, it's not like, oh, he picked Renekton, we lose the game. My point is just, if you think that Ben has to go big for them to win this series, I think it's going to be a really hard series for him, based on how these players have played and based on the picks that Nuguri has shown.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally on the DAMWON's going to win the series bandwagon, but I do think the same arguments were kind of being made about 369 and like all this stuff, and then he just picked Jax into it anyways, and he's like, whatever, dude, I'm gonna play Jax and I'm gonna win because I'm Jax and I'm Ben, and I'm gonna try and make this work, and SOFM's gonna help me, and you're not gonna be able to shut me down. And for the most part, it worked. And if he wants to just take Jax and they're gonna camp his lane and make it about top lane, like, okay. And I think, like I was saying with the red side being favorite thing, was like, yeah, both sides are going to prefer red side. So if you're early taking the Renekton, red side still is winning more games than blue in this current meta, which is cool, by the way, because that almost never happens. With how good the top laners are at Worlds, it's cool to see that they actually use. Except in LPL, they brought the world is now exposed to like, hey, when you actually hard counterpick red side, it's like pretty good.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see that.
And
so
play to it.
That's
Don't leave your Fiora out there, by the way. Don't let your Fiora be the victim of. Let's just say it. Let's air it all out right now. The Fiora pick got jungle and support ganked, and then TF ganked like a minute later or something like that, and then ganked again.
And he was still almost 1v2ing at all points of those.
Yeah,
I was cracking up though. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
but
felt pretty rough for Nugget there. But yeah, I think the fact that we're talking this much about top lane shows how important it'll be in this series.
Yeah, I do definitely agree. Specific things though, like Kennen really does slam Jax really hard.
Yep.
So maybe this is a more extreme scenario, and there's a reason why everyone's been favoring DAMWON for this long.
I mean, Suning needs to have an X factor, right? They need to have someone playing above expectation, because if you're looking at everything like on paper, I like DAMWON in basically every role. Like, I guess Huangfeng, is arguable. I guess SOFM is arguable. Those are kind of the ones where I feel like that's more up for grabs. I mean, you could make the arguments maybe about Sword Art 2 versus Barrel, but I do think like on paper, DAMWON is so heavily favored. So you need to have players stepping up. You need to have, that's where it comes in, like for coaching and preparation too. Like can Bin come into this series and everything that I think is now thrown out the window, because all of a sudden, he's playing the Kennen and he's playing, Shen, and he's playing all these different picks, or he brings the Nara into it or whatever, right? Like that is the kind of thing that I think can really mix things up and kind of throw a wrench in the gears for DAMWON. Because they need to have these big performances, these standout performances from their players to upset them. And the other thing, I can't remember who was mentioning this, but it was like the idea that coming in last year, a lot of people were thinking that G2 coming into the finals were going to be heavily favored, and like FPX, wasn't really going to be able to match up. And then FPX just kind of ran over them in the early game, right? And like none of the reasons that people thought G2 was going to win ever came to fruition, because everyone was like, well, G2 is going to get control of the map and like split them out, and they're going to play side lanes, and they're going to do all this stuff, and FPX can't do that. Well, it turned out FPX doesn't have to do that, because they just beat you in the first 10 minutes every single game. Right. And that's the kind of thing that can like come in and like make predictions sound stupid. And, if Suning can make that sort of magic happen through preparation, through counter picks, through, unexpected kind of stuff, I think that this is going to be an incredible series. And I really do hope that it's going to be really competitive, because I think that the knockout stage has had so many really exciting series. And I want this to be DAMWON really getting challenged, because for the most part, just them been cruising. Right. And I feel like if they just cruise to the finals too, it's going to feel pretty anticlimactic.
And my pitch for Suning is that they have been making magic happen, and it's not looking at individuals. It is looking in a similar way to the FPX story, where it was a lot about how they approached the game, and how Doinby had perfected the roaming mid style with Tian, and they were so good and so used to doing it. I think that a lot of the magic from Suning has been coming in, we keep coming back to their execution in some of these team fights, as well as SOFM being so flexible with his jungle to change to their needs. So if it does become this story like you're saying, and this awesome finals, I think it comes in that kind of picture, and we get more of these super clippable moments of outplays and crazy coordination and
the Huangfeng the bin barrel,
and precise things going off. So here's hope for that. I think so. I don't know if I can present this in a way that you guys won't laugh, but if I was a betting man, I would put my bet on DAMWON. I think they have a higher chance to win.
But your heart says.
But I'm going to pick Suning, even though I think DAMWON have a higher chance to win.
Where's that Spawn clip? You know, where there's on cooldown, one of these worlds cooldowns, he was saying like, anytime you hear an analyst say my head says this but my heart says this, he's like, they're really saying their head. Just ignore their other prediction. They're like they're just trying to like couch their thing.
No, and I'm not saying anything about head or heart. Like I think DAMWON have a higher percentage chance to win, but I'm choosing Suning.
Yeah.
I'm not going to mess around with you, give you any of that bullshit, Mark. I'm just telling you straight up.
Bad prediction.
I'm going Suning anyway. I really don't care. And
is this going to be one of your fraudulent predictions where you flip flop and then you do the opposite on the Twitter prediction for the Twitter poll, and then you pick both sides and try to claim success?
Yeah. I'll slam my Twitter prediction right now too.
That's the real move, is to just scattershot and be like, if anyone wants to check me on all three like places, then yeah, you'll find out I'm a fraud. But otherwise,
Kobe's done that last week.
And then afterwards, you retweet and clip the one that's right.
This or that is really good for it. What about you guys? Let's slam the predictions and get into Anchor.
I want to believe in the Suning upset, but my gut feeling is it's just going to be anticlimactic. That it's going to be 3-0, 3-1. Same thing as the semifinals. I just think for similar reasons to why I felt that way about G2, but I really do hope that Suning can bring that like next level and can have something new prepared and make it into an incredible series. But my gut feeling is if these two teams play at the same level that they've been playing, it's going to be a 3-0, 3-1 for DAMWON.
Yeah, I'm with Azale. I doubted DAMWON for the last time versus G2.
Oh yeah, you predicted G2.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. I said it wouldn't actually be like, whoever won probably wouldn't be close.
The bright side is you didn't get flamed on Twitter for predicting DAMWON. No. So
nope. But that fourth game made me feel pretty stupid. Where trying to get Dancing Rift Herald in the World Semifinals.
We've
is when
had
you realize
so many records this World.
When a team's doing that World Semifinals,
not just the European ones. Our first seed going 0-6. That is a record for us as well. That's
a Mad Lions
world record.
Set a record.
Yeah.
First major regional lose the best of 5 to a minor region was Mad Lions. Fastest game ever in world's history.
First was a reverse sweep.
Yeah, reverse
first
sweep.
number one seed getting 0-6.
Not
how many
good
records are there? None of these are good.
Stacking up. Well, good record for DAMWON. Fast.
I guess you're right. It's perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
Good record for top.
Who beat Mad again? It was Supermassive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey.
No. Supermassive.
Unicorns moved on.
I think it was Supermassive.
Supermassive beat them, but then lost.
Oh, you're talking about the elimination thing.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, it's all perspective.
My point is, when one of these teams sets one of these new records, you better take notice. And so when they have trying to get Dancing Rift Herald in the World Semifinals, that team should probably be the one that you bet on. So yeah, I'm going DAMWON 3-1, and I mean, it could be 3-0, and I feel like every Worlds, like once the best team in the world, they usually just end up smashing finals by the time they get there because they've built up all this momentum and like the meta's more figured out by finals, and a lot of these things are happening. And so unless Suning really is the second best team in the world, which I think they are, they look really good. But they can also
they for sure are.
But they can also then rise to the level of the first best team in the world. And now that the meta's settled and both teams have been grooving a little bit, like I feel like, the variation gets pressed out as you go, which is why I think DAMWON will win.
Because, to Azale's point, when he's referencing Freak and Freak talking about if they win, this is the most, it's not like they didn't do all the other steps. They did. They're either number one or number two for sure, having taken out LPL number one, LPL number two.
To be clear, the reason I said that was because World Finals are traditionally stomps, and I feel like it's because of those three things. Like you're maybe not actually the second best team, which has happened earlier on in the tournament. You have a pretty defined meta by this point, and you have these teams with momentum and stuff, and they're grooving, and there's not probably quite the same level of uncertainty. So Suning probably could be the second best team, but you still have these other two concerns.
It is weird though, I will say, and I fall victim to this too. There's like this idea where if top won, we probably would think it was closer. You know what I mean? Like there's kind of that mental thing sometimes where it's like, because it's the team that you expected and because pre-tournament expectations were top and DAMWON were the two big dogs, if top got there, you might be more willing to believe, even though Suning just beat Top. It's almost like the idea that like the magic is going to run out, right? You know, Suning's going to turn back into a pumpkin, and the clock strikes midnight, and then they're just going to get trashed. But if this is their true level, right, and if you believe that they are performing at a higher level rather than Top and JDG are performing worse, that's where it really comes down to me. Then, because if those things are true, then
well, I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to context of how the wins and losses look.
Yeah,
because you know you can have a computer.
JDG and Top were both way worse.
You can have a computer do ratings based on you know, placings and stuff like that, but so much of it is, you know, how they look when they're doing it.
Yeah, DAMWON looks, which just eye test, like watching them look absolutely the best. I think also to the point about like how we feel about these things is it's hard to throw out the entire year's worth of data, so to speak, like or at least like the last split, even if you don't want to go back to spring for relevance reasons. But like DAMWON,
in spring, Suning wasn't even in the playoffs; they were 11th.
Right. I mean, they've been on a meteoric rise. If we want to talk about meteoric rises as well, going from that to 4th or whatever it was in summer. But yeah, they were 4th in summer, whereas DAMWON has just been hard stomping all summer. They stomp. The stomps have been nonstop, you know, since summer started for DAMWON. So that's why I think it's not just Worlds that were probably like for why you feel like, oh, but
yeah,
you know,
and
Top was
JDG
better.
and Top were finals, both splits.
Yeah. Right. So
both 5-game series.
I understand people don't throw out all of history just because you got one different thing to happen.
And even in spring, where we're like, oh yeah, you know, DAMWON wasn't as great in spring, they weren't as dominant. They were still 5th in spring and then 4th in the playoffs in spring. So
yeah, they were good.
It wasn't like you know, crazy fall.
All right,
just not the crazy domination.
Anchor questions. I think that's...
Get it. The first name's easy.
Nick Shields. Nailed it. You're welcome, Nick.
Hey guys, it's Nick Shields. First of all, I wanted to say, huge fan of the dive, and you're all excellent casters and analysts, and I hope you keep up the excellent work. My question for you is, if DAMWON takes it over Suning this weekend, do you think we'll see basically another iteration of the dominance that SKT had previously? And by that I mean, do you think DAMWON has what it takes to, if they do stick with the same roster, to claim multiple world titles and bring LCK back to its former glory, seeing how DAMWON hasn't really been tested too well this tournament, and they've seemed pretty like destroying every team in dominant fashion. So I want to know if you guys think that this could be like the next SKT like reincarnation, or do you think that like after this performance, teams will catch up to them in the offseason and another team will come to challenge their title? Thanks again, and looking forward to the show when it comes out.
I like this question, and it kind of reveals that, you know, he's been watching for a long time, because only people that have been paying attention to League of Legends for a long time like think in terms of dynasties. People who have just started tuning into LoL Esports, or even the past like few years, it doesn't spring to your mind that quickly. And I've learned very, very quickly that was such a special thing with SKT. I do not hand out, oh, maybe it's a dynasty after a single world championship win, because we've had so many teams win and not even return. Like,
yeah,
where is FPX? Where is IG now?
Here.
Yeah, like at the time that they won, we're like, oh, you know, the winner always seems so dominant. We keep on having all these 3-0s, and as hyped as I will get, I have learned to be very conservative with handing out, you know, SKT-esque titles for that. You really got to prove those.
I think who can say about that part? You know, maybe DAMWON just keeps running it back, and they stomp and their SKT levels. SKT did have some stumbles even during that dynasty. Like they didn't make Worlds in 2014, but then they came back in 2015. But I think one thing that people forget with the era of Korean dominance was it wasn't just SKT. Like I might be getting this fact wrong, but I don't think they lost a best of 5 to another region during like 2014.
We had several Korea finals in a row.
And or like the semifinals would be SKT versus Rocks, which was the hypest match, and then SKT would beat some Like it's happened where they beat an LPL team. And I know that there was MSIs where Korea lost to LPL. There were teams in groups that got knocked out, who like underperformed in groups from LCK. But I think part of the reason that LCK era of dominance just felt so like you draw a Korean team, you're dead in knockout stage because no one could beat them during that time. And even if DAMWON becomes SKT, I don't think Gen G is becoming Samsung White in Samsung Blue, and you have like these insanely stacked rosters from all the Korean teams. I don't think that will happen. I don't think, because then you're asking the LPL to regress to, not like, hey, can LCK produce the best team in the world, but also, are these other regions going to be incapable of producing teams that can challenge the second and third best from LCK? I don't think that part will happen again.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that the like LCK former glory is ever coming back because to your point, it was such an insane level of dominance across the board. It wasn't just one team winning world finals. It wasn't just one team barely winning world finals. It was like, you get Korea, you're dead, right? And I think you put that really well. And I also just tend to think, if I had to guess, I don't think DAMWON is going to be repeating. I think that the LPL teams are so good, and I still believe that the LPL is by far the strongest league. I don't think it's close. And I think that, you know, as far as like depth of teams, my feeling is that Top and JDG both played worse than their average level in this tournament. And I think that other LPL teams will be rising up to challenge DAMWON, even if DAMWON does remain the best LCK team. I just don't see them remaining so much better than everyone else in the world that they get back to that SKT levels of dominance.
Every year in the LPL, there's some insane new team of like mostly rookies. Like, was it V5 this year who was on the rise? Like, who knows?
Yeah,
at the beginning,
they could be insane in next year and in the world.
Look
finals.
out for Mole. He's a Smurf.
I would also say, because you got me reminiscing, and even just bringing up the times where we could not see past Korean teams. I think something that really hammered it home was specifically how insanely hard Samsung White did smash when they took over, when they came in for that year and won. Because people still to this day will bring up that team as the best League of Legends team of all time. And that was not an SKT roster. So that was one of the things that just really was a vice grip on it. I need to move on because you're
all right. Next question here. This one's from Kayumi. Where does Malphite fit in the meta?
Hello, Mark, Kobe, Azael. I'm Kayumi, big fan of the podcast. I just want to know, what do you think about my big rocky boy Malphite and where he fits in the meta? Do you think he's strong? Do you think he's weak? Do you think he's cute? Do you think he's misunderstood? I just want to know.
So, do you guys think his big rocky boy is cute?
Yeah, he's really cute. I think he's especially cute into AD top laners such as Jace.
Better if it's a whole AD team.
Yeah, I mean, if the more AD, the better for sure. I think that Malphite does fit in the meta. I think that he's situational, though. I don't think that this is something that you should be blind picking personally, because I think he sucks against AP top laners. If I'm playing and someone blind picks Malphite, I play Cassio or Vlad or Ryze into it every time, and the Malphite has no fun. So I think that is something that can be pretty difficult. But I do think that in times when people are blind picking like Aurelia or Jace or those types of picks, even Camille, I think Malphite can be incredible.
I think even what was it, the first game of Suning versus Tops was a game where Malphite could have potentially worked into the Jace. It makes your team comp play really different. You don't have a power point early on in the map because you're not really playing around it. But in those kinds of games, you can play. We've seen Malphite a couple times at Worlds already as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're wondering, go look at those games. Try and find the Malphite games. I know Impact had one. I think there are a couple others.
Yeah,
it usually wins when people do pick it.
Yeah, because people only use it as a counter pick. They'll be like, okay, you're showing 4 AD right now, and your only AP is some single target AP or some assassin AP or something like that, and they'll use
whatever,
it. Yeah, it is also if Kennen gets banned in like a protection for Jax angle and they're trying to do something like that, it's also good into like Jax. And then the other pro is obviously the hard engage that you do bring into like possible poke comps. That's why it's so good versus Jace, because Jace is usually in poke comps and he's AD.
also, sorry to tangent back a little bit, but you got me thinking, Kobe. Your boy, your roommate Travis made a video about the best players world's ever seen, and they talked about Samsung White in it. And there's some stats in there that are like how dominant Samsung was. If anyone's curious about that, just go watch that video.
Dandy and Mata, their control over vision was just insane. You shouldn't have brought me back, Mark. All right, next one.
Sorry. I was just saying.
Keep going, Azale. What's the last one?
Mitchell Agredano, I believe. And he says, any best of 5 in the past you would like to see become best 7?
Hey guys, love the show. My question is there any best of 5 in the past that you would have liked to have seen become a best of 7?
Azale spoiled it for me. You read the whole freaking thing.
Well, the little part that's supposed to be kind of the TLDR of it was actually just the question. So I should have just not read the TLDR.
Do you have your answer, Mark? Because I have a shoot from the hip.
SKT. Yeah. One for me.
Yeah. I want to shoot from the hip as fast as I can. Fastest one gets there. That one for sure.
But then you gave me the courtesy. You're like, you spun on me. You had the gun draw, and then you're like, take your shot, and I hit.
What about, I think G2 SKT has had some really good series. I mean, there's been some really good ones. I mean, a lot of the finals aren't really usually the bangers, so those aren't the ones that I would want to see more of. Kobe.
G2 Team Liquid at MSI so that it wouldn't be the fastest best of.
It'd be the fastest best of 7. What do you say? I think KT IG would be cool to see more of, but there's a question of how much of that was Duke coming in as well. And then I think, there's one more. EDG versus SKT at, I think it was 2015 MSI. Had an interesting one. I think there's some of those that could be pretty cool.
I mean, honestly, for me, anytime it goes full 5 games, I'd be down to watch more. If it's a 5-game series and it's close, right? Like, if you said Top Fnatic, you want to play 2 more games, I'm like, yep, I'm watching, right? Like anytime it's really close, those are the ones that I want to see more of, because it's like, is it going to continue that way? How much more do you have to give? Do you have more counter picks? Those types of things. But I would say in general, best of 7, it's too many games. Yeah.
You did get me thinking though, when you mentioned the Top Fnatic one, I'm like, if it is a reverse sweep and you feel it, it kind of drifting away from the team that started 2-0, that would be where I would say, maybe not.
Yeah. They start up 2-0 and then there's 4 wins for the other team. And you're like, all right.
Yeah. That's true. That would make it feel not so close, but you never know what would happen, right?
But then the reverse sweeps become 3-0s to then losing 4 in a row. No one comes back from
Impossible. All right. That is going to do it for this week's episode of The Dive. Thank you again for tuning in. And thank you to Honda for making this possible. Suning takes on DAMWON at 3 a.m. Pacific on Saturday in front of a live audience for the first time in a long time. Join me to find out who on the 10th for the World Championship.